Welcome to How to Start a Laundromat, which is a monthly live webinar with Q&A that we do on behalf of CLA. And who is CLA? What does that mean? Well, that is the trade association, nonprofit trade association that's been serving the laundromat industry for almost 65 years now. And so we're a nonprofit resource, a membership-based organization, and our main role is to protect, preserve, and grow the laundromat industry. And as part of that mission, we think it's really important to provide education to those of you that are aspiring first-time laundromat owners. There's a ton of information out there these days, and that's great. But we also would like to have a touchstone here with the association that's authoritative, experienced, and like I said, has proven the test of time. We're also a non-biased resource, a brand agnostic resource. So we're not here promoting brand A or B. We're really just interested in making sure that you have all the information that you need. And if you've been in other industries that have a professional society or a trade association, we do a lot of those same orthodox things: education, networking, and events. In fact, we just had our in-person How to Start a Laundromat event last week here in our home market of Chicago, which was a huge success. Everyone got a ton out of that crash course in the business over the course of a full day, including a field trip over to a local laundromat. So I'll talk some more about this a little bit later on, but we're going to be continuing that in-person opportunity into the first quarter of 2025. So there might be some more chances for you to come out and learn with us. Let's get on to our faculty today, and a couple of maybe familiar faces to those of you that have been around the association or been active on social media. So I'll start. My name is Brian Wallace. I serve as president and CEO of CLA. I've had the opportunity to be on board here full-time with the CLA staff, coming up on 33 years, and certainly have had the real joy of working with many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of potential first-time laundromat owners like yourselves. And I've had an opportunity to listen in on those journeys and gain some understanding of what you're coping with and what you need. So happy to be in that role today. And to help me do that is a good buddy, and I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more here in a second, but I'm joined by Paul Hansen, who is a well-experienced owner-operator in the business, multi-generation store owner. And Paul, welcome. Great to have you as our special guest. Would you like to give a little further introduction of yourself?
Sure. No, it's great to be here, and I love the fact that, God, almost 60 participants. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, like Brian said, my name is Paul Hansen. I've been in the business. I'm actually third generation. So I've been doing it for close to 40 years. At one point, at the max, I think I had 6 stores. Right now, I'm on the board of directors of a larger organization that acquired my stores, and we're in the process of acquiring more stores. And I'm also been proud to be on the board of directors of the CLA for the last 4 or 5 years, and as well as I'm very involved in the LaundryCares Foundation, in case you can't tell from the big logo on top.
I like that background, Paul. That is awesome. I love that. I feel like I'm sitting in a family read, play, learn center in one of your stores, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we go. But well, outstanding. Great to have you on board. And I know that everyone's got an opportunity to learn from that generational experience that you have and real world experience that you have operating stores here in the Chicago market. And so, folks, again, I will strongly encourage you to find that question and answer box in the toolbar and start populating with questions. I'm going to keep an eye on those as we go here, and certainly have some prepared material that I want to share, but I will pause frequently and at length to tackle those questions. And chances are we've got a slide that pertains to what you're interested in. So yeah, and if you want to say hi to each other in the chat, that's cool too. I see Rosa and Tracy and Tuan, Kathy. Awesome to have you all with us. So let's jump into some of the content here. So who are we? What is this whole thing that we're talking about? uh, Coin laundry, coin op laundry, laundromat, laundromat, lavanderia, washateria, laundrette. Uh, we're talking about the neighborhood laundromat. So this is a public facility that we're making available to the general public to launder their clothes. And I just try to set that definitional thing because sometimes people get caught up in the semantics and what's what. What we're not talking about for sake of definition are the vended laundry machines that you would find in an apartment setting or condo or dormitory, some other kind of multi-housing setting. So we're really just talking about this retail environment for the laundromat. So, that's just really to kind of set the table. And further table setting, there are about 29,000 retail laundromat locations in the US. That's a little bit of a moving target estimate, but we do our best. It's a highly fragmented industry, which at times can make it a little bit more challenging to get a precise count. But let's just say it's a ubiquitous business. It's all over the place and pretty easy to find us. In terms of sales volume, you'll see estimates as low as 5 or 6 billion, estimates on the higher end closer to 10 billion in annual sales. So might be a little bit larger industry than you might have expected coming in, but suffice it to say we've got some really good staying power. In terms of the physical facilities themselves, we've got a statistical average these days of about 2,850 square feet. But again, understand that that's a mean, that's an average of all the stores. And Paul, maybe the group would be interested, maybe of that last group of 5 stores that you had, maybe some sense of the square footage and the type of markets that you serve to give people a little bit more context.
Sure. Yeah. Primarily, I was located in the southwest side of Chicago, very high density, high Hispanic population, high rental. All of our locations were the smallest was about 4,800 square feet up to 5,500 square feet, which, when some of them were built 25, 30 years ago, they were mega stores. Now they're kind of become average, but yeah, those are the sizes.
Average in the sense that newer stores certainly, on average tend to exceed the statistical average that we're sharing. And I think it's a good point a good opportunity to point out that we have members that are successful with 1,000 square foot stores. On our tour last week, we visited what's marketed as world's largest, which I think our friend Tom has got, I think it's 13,000 square feet and 300 plus washers. So, all can be successful. And really, at the end of the day, the size of these stores should sort of be calibrated to the demand in the market, right? So a more rural location, you might find 1,000 or 1,500 square feet to be common. If you're in the densely populated urban area, that's where you see the 5, 6, 7,000 square foot stores. So it's really based on the measured demand in the marketplace. So continuing on the tail of the tape here in the overview, most of our members are leasing their space. And so they've entered into a lease contract with a commercial real estate owner, a landlord, and they're leasing that space for a determined amount of time, for a determined amount of cost. And we're going to take a real deep dive into leases before we're done here today, because it's super important. But certainly a lot of our members aspire to own the real estate, and that's just a matter of budget and availability. And you can imagine that our suburban and rural members are probably more likely to have the opportunity to control the real estate, whereas more of our urban or inner city operators may not have that same opportunity, either again based on cost or more often just the availability of the real estate for sale. So, Paul, in your demographic, I have a couple of bullet points here about low-income renters. I mean, how would you describe the typical, prototypical customer that you've been serving all these years, just as a, for instance, for your market?
Well, it's changed a lot over the years. Primarily, when I was starting, it was mostly in very low income, poverty stricken areas. I think that has changed somewhat. I think some of those areas that were a little more downtrodden have not necessarily gentrified, but you've definitely seen more of the working class raising themselves up a bit. And you're also seeing people that might not be right in your demographic, right there next to your store, coming from a little bit farther away and starting to service people who are more, upper, lower income, or even lower middle class to come into a facility that allows them to get everything done in a clean, safe, and efficient manner.
Okay, no, fair enough. And so I think that that reflects sort of what we're seeing as a, diversifying customer base, but at its core, that lower income renter is really who we're primarily serving, looking for folks that don't have ready access to laundry equipment or adequate, let alone better laundry equipment for that laundry day. So yeah, I mean, we talk about 20 million families a week, and increasingly drawing people out of that home laundry space and that apartment laundry space. A lot of people think or view it in terms of laundromat competition being other retail laundromats in the area, which is certainly true, but also we're vying for those apartment renters who are staying home, that are, staying in that apartment setting and using the vended laundry equipment that's on site there. So that's certainly part of the picture. Well, I'm going to pause here because we've gotten some questions that have come in. I want to kind of rapid fire, and I'll throw a couple of these over to Paul as warranted as we go. Um, Tatiana, looking to be a first-time laundromat owners, tips for first-time buyers. We're going to get into a lot of those along the way here, but maybe we'll just start with the headline, Tatiana, is thank you for being here, doing your homework. Certainly a lot of the mistakes that I see made by first-timers is that they are in such a hurry and fall in love with the narrative of getting into the business that they don't take the time to do the proper research and homework. And so you need to kind of balance your enthusiasm and your drive to get this done, which is imperative, but be sure you do your homework, and we're going to help you do that. Matt asked me to say a little bit more about growing into the home laundry space. And what I'm saying there, Matt, is really twofold. One, and I'll see if Paul can attest to this, we're definitely seeing more clients come to the laundromat that have a home washer or the equivalent of a home washer, and they're choosing us, Paul, for that time savings and convenience, right? I mean, you've really leaned into a larger equipment mix in terms of capacity. I imagine that helps bring some of the homeowners out.
Absolutely. I mean, it just time is money. And, if you're even if you're in an apartment with a in-unit washer or, a laundry room, generally those are smaller machines. And if you got a large family, you got time, I mean, that takes time. So it's much easier to come in. You can throw it all into one or two machines. I mean, there's machines as big as, well, probably bigger than that now, but 130 pounds is the biggest ones I've ever done, that you can basically come in and do a week's worth of laundry. And with today's equipment, as fast as it spins out and the dryer, I mean, you can get in and out in an hour and a half, 2 hours, where it might take you, 2, 3 days to do that at home. So you can consider, I think a lot of people realize that their time is worth more than that. So they'd rather just come in and get it done and knock it out quickly.
Yeah, no doubt. And for the sake of our newbies, when Paul's talking about a 130-pound capacity washer, we're talking about the equivalent of what you would probably call, 10 to 13 loads of laundry. So getting it all done at once, I mean, that's really the ultimate. I would say that, good chunk of our members probably top out at more of an 80-pound capacity, but still that is, getting 8 loads of laundry done in one process. So that's increasingly appealing to customers and a differentiator, not just from older school laundromats, but like Paul said, from the apartment laundry room, the in-unit laundry, or a typical home machine that at best is a double load machine. So that's definitely part of the picture here. Jumping over to the Q&A box, I've got a question here. I'm between two manufacturers for machines. Just want to make the right decision on the biggest asset. And he points out that one of the brands has more options and better service in your area. And so I'll let you correct me or add to this, Paul, but here's the advice I've given forever, which seems to hold water pretty well, which is people do tend to get caught up in the brands, different brands of washers and which is the best washer. Particularly for first timers, the advice that I've given is to get out and meet with all the commercial laundry equipment distributors, each of whom represents a different brand or two of washers. Um, Spend time with them, ask them questions, try to line up your needs with what they're offering, where you best connect and feel like you're well supported. And frankly, find the best distributor in your market and buy whichever brand of equipment they happen to carry. In other words, I see that as almost like a secondary decision, brand versus the quality of the distributor in your area. Would you quarrel with that, Paul, or add to that?
No, I mean, I definitely say that. And I think you also, if you're looking for a distributor, you want somebody who is going to be willing to help you on more than just pushing the metal. To try and help you, many of them will help you with demographic reports. Some of the best distributors I've dealt with and other people I've heard dealt with are the ones who you come to them, hey, I got this spot, I want to build a laundromat, and they tell you no, not a good idea,
Right.
don't
We're
do it. I'm
willing to
not
tell you no. Yeah.
willing to tell you no, which is
Yeah.
important, because there might be some out there that say, yeah, hell yeah, and I can put I can sell you $1 million worth of equipment and stuff in that mediocre space. You don't want that. So yeah, good distributor is essential, essential moving forward, and all the equipment manufacturers, all the main manufacturers, they all make great machines. I mean, nobody's perfect. Everyone's got their idiosyncrasies one way or the other. Just what you're comfortable with, what style you're comfortable with. But if you're comfortable with the type of service you get from your distributor, I think that goes a long way, especially for a first time owner.
Yeah, I think that's well said and well said from experience of having done business with lots of distributors over time. Tuan is asking, Tuan Win, with 200 or 250,000 to start a small or mid-sized laundromat. Let me just pause there. We're going to talk some more a little bit later. That level of investment is unlikely to get you more than a very small laundromat. Would it be wiser, more cost-effective to work with distributors to build a new one or find an existing older laundromat to remodel and buy new equipment? So there are a couple different questions in there, but we're going to talk some more about what resources you're bringing to the table. But the buy or build question, I've got a whole chart for you a little bit later in the presentation of pros and cons. But I think what you want to do more often than not is try to let that opportunity sort of live or die on its own merits, whether it's a new build opportunity in a great location or an acquisition. Let the best deal win. Now, from there, obviously, there's going to be a difference in cost and investment. Yes, most people that are choosing to build would be going through the distributor route, as Paul just described, and work with them to get that store built out. Making an acquisition, you're either dealing with a broker or buying directly from the seller, which has its own pros and cons as you go along. So it's really a combination of what you have to spend and what's available in your market, whether that be great locations or great stores available to purchase. Anything you would add to that, Paul?
No, that's a perfect answer to that.
Okay, good. And your follow-up question, Tuan, is it wise to work with an independent contractor that has experience in building a laundromat or with a distributor who does everything from planning to building to equipment? You're probably often talking about the same contractor, or you could be talking about the same contractor. So I think the salient point there is working with either GC and or tradespeople, electricians, plumbers, carpenters that have experience in building laundromats that you can look at and inspect and verify. And again, sometimes that's directly through the distributor. Where they're going to be willing to serve as a GC for you, or they have those relationships. They have those tradespeople that they've done business with in the past that have a lot of experience building out laundromats. So maybe, Paul, you maybe say a few words about, in your experience, the importance of working with folks that it's not their first time building a laundromat.
Yeah, I've always had our distributor act as GC. I think they have a long track record with various vendors that not only know what they're doing, but they know they've dealt with them before and they know where to trim the costs. I found that through our distributor, at least them doing the GC has been cost savings over what we've gotten quotes on from independent GCs. And you don't even know if they know what they're doing. You know, if they've done a laundromat, there are some things that are a little different in a build out, especially, you know, when it comes to plumbing, HVAC, that type of thing that is really kind of a specialized construction area.
I've even heard examples, plenty of examples from our members that are construction companies and are trades, and they will tell you that even though I have my own plumbing contracting business, I will tell you you want to, at least the first time out, use someone who's done laundromats before. So even among the pros, they'll tell you you want to use someone who's done this type of build out in the past. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to jump over to the chat and pick up a few questions, and then we'll get into the next piece of prepared materials. Alexander is asking about current challenges for store owners, foot traffic, brand awareness, you know, and then he's asking if there are meetups. So I'll answer the meetup question. We do events all the time. We have a product that we call CLA Connect Live, where we get together in many markets around the country. More often than not, twice a month in different markets. We've got a meeting in Atlanta on Thursday night. So there are opportunities to connect, and that would be a huge part, whether formally through CLA or on your own. Building what I call building out your laundry network is super important in the beginning. So getting to know other store owners, super valuable. But Paul, his basic question, you know, when you talk about the top couple of challenges from an operational standpoint, bringing people in the door, Alexander's asking about foot traffic and brand awareness. I mean, what are some of the things that would be of top concern to you as you go along?
Well, yeah, as far as brand awareness, I mean, that's relatively new. I mean, it's been around a little bit, but relatively new building brands. I think the jury's still out whether that actually makes a difference, because depending on your market, you have a specific kind of zone, whether it's a mile or a smaller market, 5 miles or whatever that you're dealing with. So I don't know, brand awareness. The challenges really I see are more operational. I think trying to find qualified employees and with wages going up could be a challenge. I think utility bills and particularly water bills is one of the big issues. Gas and electric are pretty much a commodity that pretty much stays, well, it doesn't say stable, but it's, you know, it's dictated by market forces, whereas water is more whatever, usually your municipality. And depending on your municipality, they could decide to really stick it to you. Some of the, you know, some areas crime can be an issue, but I think technology has gone a long way. Camera systems, alarms, that type of thing has gone a long way to alleviate a lot of those issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
those are
I think that's a good one, and we're going to touch on, I think, a number of those items a little bit further as we go along. So catching up some more on the chat. You're welcome, Kathy. You're welcome, Tatiana. You're welcome, Matt. Rosa, right on. Getting it all done at once is a powerful marketing message. Josephine, for 1,000 square foot space, what is the best amount of equipment to start with? Washers and dryers. So again, I think it's really important, especially for a very tiny space like that, is to get with a local distributor who's done laundromats before and get with them about how to optimize that space. Because Paul, you know, the orientation, the utility service, the access to incoming water and sewer, all that is going to really dictate what, if anything, you can do in that space, right? It's because we're really building a little production facility here, aren't we?
Yeah, and you know, it could, you know, again, it depends on the building. It could be something with a basement underneath it. Well, that requires a whole new set of challenges in order to.
Or apartments above it.
Or apartments above it, as far as venting and stuff, as far as where some of the load bearing walls or pillars. Sometimes you have buildings that have, pillars in the middle there, support beams that, can't be moved. So yeah, you would really need, it would depend space by space, and it would depend on your market, what your competition is, what people are looking for.
Yeah, and remember, in that 1,000 square foot space, you're also going to need to leave room for folding tables, for carts, for a place to sit. So all those things are well addressed through your local distributor for sure. So Casey, here's a good one that I think Paul can address. Question on equipment. At what point do machines require a whole lot more maintenance? After 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, from what I understand, newer machines last about 20 years. But at what point do the upkeep costs become significant? So how would you kind of give us an answer about kind of what it's like to maintain a store full of equipment, and how do you sort of calibrate the age? You gave a good answer to our group last week on this question.
Yeah, I mean, most of the equipment today, I mean, 20 years, they'll actually last longer. I mean, I've seen stores with, I've actually seen some stores, it's still in Chicago, with equipment that I think is 40 years old. I wouldn't want to wash there, but they have the machines there.
Right. Key point.
Yeah, it all depends on how proactive you are with your maintenance. If you maintain them and keep them in really good shape, they can last a long time. Most of the expenses, biggest one is going to be if something major. A major thing would be a bearing on a washer, which is a major job, and most people aren't equipped to do it themselves. So could cost you several $1,000s. So, but if you're, other than that, as long as you're maintaining it and keeping it good. But the big thing about new equipment is not so much whether you can keep it running, it's what you can save with it and what people will value your store at. I'm talking about customers too. Customers like shiny new, fancy things. They just like it. The efficiencies of today's machines are night and day above what they were even 20 years ago in terms of, we mentioned earlier, water. Water consumption. Today's machines, you can dial that down to the gallon, where in the past you didn't really have a whole lot of options. You can dial it how many cycles, you want to offer more cycles, you want to upcharge for cycles. Those are all things that the new equipment offers. But as far as maintaining it, it's just, so long as you want to keep it going, you can keep it going and keep working on it. But you reach a point where it's a little bit of diminishing returns, I think.
I think it's also a good time to just mention that, yes, age of equipment is a primary measure, and you shouldn't have a whole lot to do in the first 5 years, more to do in years 6 through 10. You get to 15 or 10 to 15, you're certainly going to be doing more work as the wear and tear comes on. But I always like the sort of the odometer on the car analogy. It also has something to do with how often those machines are being used. Is this just the dynamite store that's cranking day and night? And you might wear out the best machine on the market in 7 or 8 years, but you're very happy to spend the money to replace it because you're making money hand over fist. And conversely, sometimes you see those 20-year-old machines out there in the field. Sometimes it's some combination of being meticulously maintained, and maybe it's a lower volume store. Maybe it's doing 2 or 3 turns a day and didn't see that high level of use. So, but I will beware or offer the buyer beware. One of the most common mistakes I've seen literally thousands of times over is a first-time investor buys an existing laundromat on the representation, on the promise, on the hope, the wishful thinking that that equipment is perfectly fine. And they get into that store and they find that it's in rough shape, that they just bought the store and now need to turn around and start buying equipment very early on in their process. And that kind of that double whammy of buying the business and then having to take on a note to replace a lot of the equipment is really a difficult thing to survive, honestly. So I think the takeaway there is have someone who knows what they're doing go through that equipment before you buy the store. Not just verifying the age, they can look at serial numbers, et cetera, but also kind of walk through that equipment and make sure that it's in good shape, or other things that you can do to mitigate that. So Good. All right. Well, Kyle, thank you. Yes, we like that time savings pitch for middle class families. It's for all families, really, Paul, right? I mean, time savings, sometimes that lowest income family needs to value that time more than anybody. They got multiple family members, sometimes a multi-generational household. Everyone's got a job day and night, different shifts. And so, right, that time savings is, I think, just across the board is the most important thing that we're offering people.
Yeah, I think the time savings, and I think just the product you get. I mean, the typical home top load washer, well, there's more front loads now, but still don't give as good a wash. You're not going to get a good quality wash either. People want to have their clothes clean. I mean, it's important. But yeah, time savings. And for some of those people that are, in lower income areas too, they want a clean place to go. I mean, I think our
Right, right.
industry in the past had gotten a bit of a bad rap, probably rightly so in the past, because it was, dingy, dirty old stores. And I can't tell you how many people, when I say this is the business, and like, oh, I would never go into a laundromat. Those are disgusting. I'm like, well, you got to come into
Like, hey,
today's
come
world.
see my store.
Yeah, come on by and see what it's really like. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean that old reputation, in fact, a lot of old crappy stores that are still out there just is another huge competitive advantage for you to come in and fix up a place or build a place that's great from day one. So, awesome. Well, keep the questions coming. I'm gonna kind of go back over to some of the prepared material, knock through a few more slides, and then Yair, Manuel, Sophia, you got a couple of questions teed up, and I'll jump over to you here in just a second. So, we've touched on a bunch of this already, and so we'll be able to kind of fast forward in different places. But let's just kind of start with, why laundromats? Why do our members love being in the laundromat business? What drew them to the industry? What keeps them in the industry? And then we're going to balance that, right, with some of the challenges and obstacles and opportunities. This is an essential service. People need clean clothes. That demand is there, rain or shine, day or night, recession or boom time, pandemic or healthy time. We've proven over the years that we continue to do business. Now, no one wants a recession, no one wants a pandemic, but we tend to hold our own better than most other businesses under those tougher conditions. There's a simplicity to the business, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. You see a lot of stores that are in rough shape, and that just shows you that they were not able to execute on those simple, evident things you need to do to be successful. Be in the right location, keep it meticulously clean, keep the machines running all the time, have ample parking, have friendly service. That's easy to point those things out, but much harder to execute on. So when I say simple, I mean simple, but it's not easy to execute. But a lot of our members do like a few less moving parts, particularly compared to other businesses, right? So, when we talk to people that are running restaurants or people that are running software companies or marketing agencies or you name it, this is just a more simple business than what people are accustomed to. But again, that doesn't mean that it's a guarantee of success or that it isn't difficult to do. So I'll tee this one up for you, Paul, particularly in the social media space and some of the hype that's out there on the industry. There's an awful lot out there about the industry being passive or absentee. And I'd love to hear your take on that. I don't view it. I don't see our members as being passive or absentee. I see that they can leverage technology and create systems to kind of limit the amount of time that they spend there or optimize the amount of time that they spend. But I don't imagine you ever experienced a situation where you show up once a week to collect the quarters.
No, absolutely not. I mean, there's always something to be going on that has to be taken care of, whether it's, something you don't expect or just regular maintenance. Yeah, there's no way. I mean, yeah, too many of these so-called influencers out there. I mean, I go on TikTok and I see, somebody's got 10 million views. All they show is pulling quarters out of a machine, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is easy. Once a week." It's not that. You have to be there. You don't have to be there a lot. I mean, we're your last point there is really good. I was able to be at every one of my kids' events and sporting events and concerts and all that because of the flexibility. But I still have to be there, and you get, and most of us, are small business owners, and you're everything. You're going to be answering the call if an alarm goes off at 2 a.m. You're going to be, there's a flood, you got to figure it out. I mean, Customers got a complaint. I mean, you have to be there, especially when you're starting out. You can't really
You're on
offset
call, right?
what
It's your
else.
business. You're on call, and this is a business that's open, at least 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day, or 24 hours a day, in some of your experience, 364 or 5 days a year, weekends, nights, so again, you don't need to be there, but you're responsible, and you need to be in a position to respond. We've made a lot of good friends in the business, Paul. We've been out to dinner with friends that are laundromat owners, and someone's got to go grab a call, right? Because there's a break-in or there's an issue or a water heater went down, or it's just kind of that mentality and that lifestyle of being an entrepreneur that you got to make sure that you're cut out for that. But that's the number one positive I hear from our members over time is that flex, that kind of that flexible flex time business where you got to work hard, you got to put the effort in, but you get to drive the kids to school or coach little league or do some of the other things that you alluded to. So I think that's a more accurate representation. And the fact of the matter is, you, as we sit here today, a month from now, 6 months from now, or a year from now, you could be operating one of the best laundromats in your market, if not the best. In other words, there's no barrier to entry when it comes to doing the job well. There are no dominant national chains. There are only a handful of small fledgling franchises. So you have this opportunity, provided the right location, the right distributor partner, and the right drive to do really some amazing work and some not just beautiful stores, but those that generate a high level of profitability for you. So that's really what a lot of people like about the business. Let me jump over to the chat here. A few more things. Thanks, Catherine, for giving us a link to upcoming events. Manuel, yes, we do have some national events, usually once or twice a year, where you can see the vendor exhibits. One thing to put a pin in for everybody listening is the Clean Show. The Clean Show 2025 will be August 23rd to the 26th. Maybe Catherine can put the link in the chat as well. This is a huge trade show, usually 10,000 to 12,000 people. Every piece of equipment, technology, et cetera, on the planet will be there. We'll be there as an association with tons of education and social events. So if you have any interest in pursuing this business, I strongly recommend that you put the Clean Show in your plans for the coming year. It's just indispensable, and anyone who's anyone will be at that show pursuing that. Yair, yes, we've done events in Arizona. I think I've been out there twice this year. And so stay tuned. There's a good core of folks in the business in Arizona. Sophia, ideal square footage. Like I said, it's really based on what you can find and how you can calibrate it to the market. Paul, I'd say most new stores today are probably upwards of 3,500 square feet, maybe 4,000 square feet. But again, it really just depends on what you're trying to serve and what's available to you. Anything else you would say on ideal square footage?
Yeah, it all depends on your market. In a heavily dense area, like you said, last week we were at the world's largest. I mean, 13,000 square feet. Obviously, in a small rural town, that would be excessive. So,
To say the least, yeah.
yeah. So it all depends on your market and your competition that's out there.
Cool. Christina, I'm in New York, and there are lots of opportunities for ownership. I'm very interested in securing financing as I'm doing this independently. So I will have a slide for you on financing, but I'll give you a quick preview that, a good chunk of the financing in our business happens through what I'll call captive lenders or industry-specific lenders. In other words, folks that are in business to loan on laundromats. Now, that's typically on a build-out basis, getting behind the equipment part of the picture, but increasingly these companies are also offering acquisition financing, particularly in cases where you're making an acquisition and you need to add some new equipment to the mix. So these are companies that are either owned, finance companies are either owned by the equipment manufacturers or have close relationships with the manufacturers, and they know the business. One of the challenges with conventional financing is that there's just not a lot of small business lending happening, period. When you say a laundromat, like Paul said, they kind of look at you funny, like a laundromat, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about financing a laundromat. Um, I'll get to this a little bit later, but again, a lot of the online resources that you see these days are really leaning heavily into seller financing, as it's easy. You don't need to get your own financing. You can get into this business easily. Well, I don't know about you, Paul. I don't see a ton of seller financing out there. Years ago, that was more prominent. And not to say that you can't find seller financing, but I don't know that I would rely on seller financing, Paul, because I just don't see as much of it out there these days.
No, I think people who are wanting to sell want to sell and get their money. They're not really willing to wait 5, 6 years to get their money and hope you pay it back. So yeah, I agree with you that 100% on that.
Okay. So it can happen under certain circumstances, but I wouldn't rely on it. Wayne, same question. Financing options in the NYC Metro, again, it's going to be some of those same companies. Christina mentioned partnering with Eastern Funding. Again, each of the washer manufacturers, Alliance, there's Speed Queen Financing, Hipsch Financing, there's Dexter Financial Services. Gerbau North America has a finance program. Fagor going down the list, Maytag, they all have a finance program, believe me. And again, your distributor, a well equipped professional distributor, will have at least one very reliable resource for financing their customers, if not two or three. So that's really where it's at when it comes to the work there. So you're welcome, Casey. Mark, do you have a slide that talks about key geographic and demographic data? Not in this presentation, but I'll say a couple things. All these primary topics that we're talking about, CLA has videos, white papers, one-on-one consultations, referrals that we can make on all these key topics, including demographics and site selection. And so same thing with pro formas, and you have a follow-up question about lenders that I just talked about. So again, the demographic analysis on a location, Paul, is maybe a little bit more art than science, but I see people build models based on successful stores that they've operated, successful stores that they've observed. But I think when most people look at a raw demographic report, they're probably focused on not just the sheer level of population, but the percentage of renter-occupied households, along with really looking at that per household income. Are those the top couple of things you find yourself looking at when you evaluate a location?
Oh yeah, certainly. And then, and it depending on your location, I'm located in Southwest Chicago, we would always look for heavily Hispanic populations because they tend to have multiple families in a state, even if even if there's not apartments, it's all single family homes. They could be renter occupied and there could be 2 or 3 generations living there, multiple people. And that's kind of a great target for us because, they're not gonna be able to do it all in their house, even if they have a machine, they got to come in. But yeah, definitely, most of the demographic reports, people do, again, it depends on your location, 1, 3, 5 mile kind of radius, little circles around there and with the, income levels, renter. Then you can also do traffic counts. I've seen, people get traffic counts to see, how much traffic's going through the area, all those things. But it's a bit of an art, and it's dependent on where you're at, really.
Yeah, no, well stated. That we can't teach you all about site selection, but we've got a lot of resources in an hour. But we got a lot of resources that you can follow up on. So let's kind of transition now. Make sure I'm keeping up with. And again, thank you for this ton of questions. This is really great, and thank you, Catherine, for helping us in the chat with tons of links for folks. So why not laundromats? And so I wanted to kind of talk about instances where our members may have challenges or the business isn't the right fit for them. So let me just kind of go through these. I'll lay these out and then I'll let Paul give us a little commentary based on his experience. Good locations are hard to find. I'm thing goes for acquisitions. Some markets have a ton of listings from brokers, but the stores are all garbage. Or there's only one or two listings and maybe they're at a premium price. Or maybe you find yourself somewhere in the middle, but I just want to kind of prepare you for the fact that there may be some scarcity, particularly with the hype and the a lot of conversation going on about the industry right now. Paul, this is one I always try to bring up somewhat euphemistically. You alluded to it earlier about dealing with the general public. It's just not for everybody. And let's just be honest here. When you're a place of public accommodation, any retail or service business that's open to the public, you kind of deal with what the public might bring you. And again, not that it's unsafe. You can certainly take a lot of good measures to operate the store in a safe manner, but I've told people that I've had a member the other day who told me that, you know what, we have sort of a front row seat when it comes to some societal challenges, whether it be homelessness or drug addiction or just people that get a little wacky when they're out there in the public. So you think it's fair for me to point this out to make sure that people have a kind of the right perspective and temperament for dealing with the public, because it's not for everybody.
No, definitely not. And especially now, with the availability of social media and reviews, just about anyone with a dumb thought in their head can go out and put it on the internet. And
Yeah.
it used to be in the past, not that was a great thing, but when I started out, it was no problem just tell them, get the hell out of here, leave. Go somewhere else. You can't do that anymore. Now you'll get a 4-page review on Yelp about how bad your store is, and those are forever. So yeah, you have to have that. You have a bit of a thick skin. Even if the customer is completely wrong, which many times they are, many times they're not, but you still got to be able to deal with it in a professional manner, which is not for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And therefore, my best advice, I'll keep saying that, but one of my best pieces of advice, I think, and I certainly didn't originate this, is if you're really serious about doing this, put some laundry in the trunk, keep it there, and just stop and do laundry in as many places as you can. And you are going to learn so much just from stopping and doing laundry. What you like, what you don't like, the way the layouts work, how they maybe have their store set up, additional services, the equipment, talking to other customers, how the attendants interact with customers. If you go out and do laundry in 10 or 15 laundromats in your market, you're also starting to build a competitive analysis so you can make a note of equipment mix and vend price and how many parking spaces and grade them on cleanliness, et cetera. But there's really no cure beyond just going out and doing laundry. And that really helps for, I had a member the other day, she was part of one of these calls and she said, Brian, I'm going to be your shortest lived member ever. You guys have been great. I got a ton of information. I learned a lot, but I went out and did a bunch of laundry and I just decided that's just not a good fit for me. And I said, great. I'd rather have you do that than go down the path of buying or building something that you're not going to be happy with. So go out and do some laundry, folks. And really, this has come up a lot in the chat already, is questions about financing. So at the root of that, most of the people that I work with over time, their number one obstacle is just pulling together that initial investment to buy or build their first store. And so there's certainly no shame in that. It's very, very common. It is not inexpensive to get into the business, despite what you might see again on social media. And so, I think our job is to tell you like it is. And I'm going to attempt to do that. I can't tell you that the initial investment's one of the biggest challenges and then not give you any kind of context. So let me take a shot at it here and then Paul can correct me based on his experience. So look, if you're going to buy a store, I get members sharing deals with me all the time that are $100,000 or 200 or 300,000. And, often it's kind of like a dog with fleas, and as long as you understand what those shortcomings are, and if there are things you can live with, we'll talk through those things. But, stores are listed for a couple $100,000 and certainly to a couple $1,000,000. We see stores trading at that level. So it really just is calibrated based on how that store operates. I'll talk a little bit more about valuation as we go here, but strictly for the purpose of understanding the initial investment, most of the time, if you need to access acquisition financing, that's a 30%, maybe as high as a 40% down payment. So if you're seeing that store that's listed for $1 million, yeah, you're probably going to need 300,000 or 400,000 in cash if you're going to really pursue that store, with any real intent. Building a new store, now this is where it's a lot more challenging, but I'm going to try to talk you through it. An existing building with an existing space, either it's another business or it's a vanilla box. So we're not including the cost of real estate. We're gonna lease this space, and we're going to put the equipment, buy the equipment and install it. We're going to do the build out, the construction to convert this space to an operating laundromat, utilities, carpentry, the finishes. We're just going to take this space and from a blank slate or another business and make it a laundromat. I think you have to start at $300 to $400 per square foot, and you might find that you can do it for less. Very likely that you might find it for more. And so, yeah, that average square footage that we shared earlier at was it 2,850 square feet. Yeah, you're talking about $1.2 million, $1.3 million, $1.4 million for that just quote average sized store in terms of total project cost, excluding real estate. There are so many variables that are involved in our in-person workshop last week. We talked a lot about insufficient plumbing or insufficient electricity service. But just to give you a context, I think you could do a lot worse than starting at $300 or $400 a square foot and then getting a real quote from a qualified distributor about really what it's going to take. So do you find any fault with what I've laid out there, just to try to give people a general idea, Paul?
No, that's a pretty good number there. It's dependent too on, obviously the local cost for building your area, what type of building it is, what kind of water services has as versus what it needs. And the equipment. Equipment is going to be your biggest thing. Equipment costs have gone up quite a bit over the last, I don't know, say 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a wide range too there, depending on the type of equipment. I mean, you can go down from a traditional, what we call hard mount machine without any of the bells and whistles, all the way up to these soft mount with, digital screens and up to 130 pounds of capacity. That could be, 30, 40 grand a machine to buy.
Right,
So it all depends on your mix.
That's what you don't hear oftentimes is really people talking about with the equipment costs. Again, it generates revenue, can generate a very profitable business, and chances are that 130 pounder is your most profitable machine in the building. But there's obviously a cost involved with that. So I just want to try to give people some sense of what it takes to do this. So let me jump back into the chat a moment here and try to catch up on some of these questions. Thank you so much for adding these questions. Yair is asking about training for equipment maintenance. Yeah, most of the well-qualified distributors will have what we call service schools. Well, they'll invite customers to come in often on a Saturday morning, and they'll tear down a machine and then put it back together again and answer your questions and show you through the process. Like all things in life, YouTube is an indispensable resource. You'll probably find repairs on YouTube. Some of the manufacturers will even have service training at their facility. So you have to fly into where they're located. But yes, there is help out there. And if you're hiring an independent service person in your area, be sure to look over their shoulder. They won't mind. Watch what they're doing, watch and learn, and get yourself up to speed. Let's see. Yes, Kathy, retail is not for wimps. Matt is asking about typical margins for self-service, wash, dry, fold, and pickup and delivery. So, well, you don't know this, but I've got a secret weapon with Paul, who's a accounting genius by training and probably has a lot to say about margins. I don't know, self-service laundry, Paul, I hear a lot of 30 to 40% on a gross margin basis. What would you say would be typical margins?
Yeah, I'd say anywhere from 25 to 40%, depending on, one of the biggest drivers depends on if labor costs,
Right.
If you're unattended or partially attended, would be far different than a fully attended store. For example, we always have two people working just about all shifts. So, obviously it makes a higher percentage of labor goes into that, but, it's necessary. But yeah, I would say that's a good number for the self-serve. Wash, dry, fold. There's so many answers to that. It depends. Are you doing wash, dry, fold as an addition? You already have attendants that are there, so you already have your labor costs kind of already taken care of. So there's not a lot of extra labor. So then the margins could be great.
Mm.
If you're bringing somebody in that's their only job, obviously that's going to make a big difference. Pick 'em and delivery, same thing. Pick 'em and delivery is really a different business, completely, even from wash, dry, fold. Especially if you're talking about your own fleet, having, or not even a fleet, your own vehicle, just one vehicle.
Right,
And
right.
you got to deal with insurance, which could be costly. You got to deal with finding a driver. You got to, invest in some software to route that and take orders. You got to pay credit card fees to take the payment. I mean, it all depends on what you want to do. There's even some systems out there that'll allow you to not have to hire your own driver. You can use an Uber or a DoorDash or one of these other third party people that do pick up and delivery with various levels of success that's happened, which will make a difference too in the margin there. So it's such a wide variety. Depends on how you want to run it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even on wash, dry, fold, which I would call kind of, I think you take that as walking in and customers walking in and dropping it off and then pick
Yeah.
up delivery, obviously going out and getting it. So as you kind of go up that pyramid, so maybe the profitability isn't 25 to 40%, but it might be 15 to 20%, or even a few points better than that. So again, compared to a lot of other businesses, again, that's one of the things that does draw people is that while it might be a relatively low volume business compared to a lot of other things, the margins tend to be pretty good, even when you have to build in those additional expenses for the full service product.
Yeah.
Um,
And it depends on how much you want to do. I mean, some people get in the business. I mean, our industry has such a wide variety from the small unattended stores, and that's what people want. I don't want to deal with it. I'm going to go in 2, 3 days a week, fix the machines, collect the quarters. I don't want to deal with employees. I don't want to deal with, headaches of lost laundry and all that. To people who have, we have all of the above. We do all those services, but it requires a lot more management, a lot more hands-on, and in some ways a thicker skin.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, Derek. Yeah, definitely not for everybody. Christina, good advice. Go out and get some laundry done. Derek, go out and get some laundry done. Um, Matt asking about advice on offering franchise once the brand is established. Well, so let's just talk about franchises for a moment. And again, we're agnostic out here. We're just trying to help you understand what's out there. We talked a lot about the distributor model, but there's also this franchise or becoming a franchisee model. So I'll say a couple things about the franchise approach. And I think, Matt, you're asking once you kind of get your brand and your version of this up and running, then offering it on a franchise basis. So that's a whole other thing that you might know more about than I do in terms of becoming a franchisor. But what I will say is that we do have now 3, 4, 5 sort of, I would say kind of early stage franchises that are out there, if not fledgling franchises. And if you go look, there are some really beautiful looking stores that people are putting out there. I think that's one thing I can say for at least the franchised locations that I've seen, that these are kind of well put together stores. They look great. There's just in the news now about some larger franchisees coming on board with the Tide Laundromat brand. So I think what you have to do is really look at, again, in comparison to the distributor model, like what additional things are being done for you that it would have value and offset with the cost, right? Because any franchise, I don't care if it's fast food or haircuts or pet care or whatnot, there's that franchise fee or marketing fee that's involved in it. And so I am seeing members that are happy with the franchise choices that they've made. I've seen other people that have said, well, maybe next time out, I think I could do it on my own, and kind of everything in between. So it is admittedly one of the few kind of service or retail businesses that hasn't been dominated by some franchising or a big roll up that you've seen in other industries. It's still primarily mom and pops that are out there. So becoming a franchisor down the line, Matt, I like your aggressive view of the future, and that. But I think that the appetite seems to be, and the offerings are certainly more than they were even 3 or 4 years ago. Paul, anything you would add on that front?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, you've seen the explosion of franchises, and we'll see if that model works. I mean, I think one of the things, and it goes to even what we said earlier about not having a national brand or anything like that. There's really not any economies of scale by going large, like that. Our main expenses are going to be rent, utilities, and labor, and you really can't. There's no way to get lower utilities by being bigger. I mean, you might be able to skim a little bit off, that's a bad word. You can get a little bit off of like your electric and gas, but anyone has those ability to go to a broker and do that. They can help you with a lease. Obviously, if you're not a good negotiator, they can help you negotiate a better lease perhaps. But there's no, you're not getting the water cheaper, you're not getting your labor any cheaper than the guy down the street.
Yeah. And again, that would apply for, and again, we have members that have 20, 30, 50 stores, and they love it, but they're kind of stacking these, right? And there's some economy of scale in their management and their time, but those per unit costs, like you said, rent, labor, utilities, they're the same, if not a little bit more in terms of staffing than you might need in other cases. So again, there's a million ways to do this, and everybody's been successful and not successful in these different opportunities. Let me jump over to the Q&A box, and then we'll pick up the pace here. We got our last 30 minutes to go, but again, you guys have been great with your questions. Digital advertising can be expensive, just like mail advertising. Do you suggest spending more on mailing and signs outside for visibility, or spending more on digital, like Google Ads, social media? Paul, I'm seeing a lot of our members that have really invested in the digital side. It's like if they can't find you on the phone, they can't find you. But how do you kind of view your marketing budget in terms of kind of traditional or snail mail type advertising versus what you can spend in a digital space?
Yeah, I don't recommend any kind of mail advertising. I've tried it over the years at various times with various offers. And I think they say, it's something like 3 to 4% response rate in general with those mailings. I found it was even less than that for us. So it just wasn't worth the lift to do it. Digital, it could be great, but digital has gotten so, you really need a professional. It's gotten so complex that unless you know what you're doing, in fact, I just saw something the other day that one of our partner or one of the friends of ours who's a marketing company sent somebody a message. Hey, you're in Florida. I'm in Iowa. I'm getting ads being served up to me in Iowa for your laundromat. I don't think you really want that. So you need
Right.
somebody.
Yeah, there could be a lot of waste if it's not done properly, for sure.
Yeah, and it's very complex. I mean, I've tried to learn it myself, and there's just so many pitfalls and ways that you can go wrong with it. But I would say that, and then signage. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a one-time expense, I think, generally. I mean, you want to refresh it maybe every now and again, but you do want to have nice signage. You want people to know it's a laundromat. You want to know that that's bright, well lit, and people can see it. Doesn't do any good to have the best laundromat in the world if nobody knows where it's at, because they drive down the street and they can't see it, even with Google Maps.
Yeah, no, well put. And for some of the questions that have come in, I'll just remind everybody that we are recording this, and we will share the slides and the Q&A out with everybody. In the chat, Catherine's put a link to our website, which is laundryassociation.org, and plenty of the other resources that we've made reference to along the way. So let's get into some more content here. And the good news is, with your questions have been so good, I'm sure these are some things that we've asked and answered, but let's make sure we can go through this. Laundromat valuation is probably a 3-hour topic. So we'll do the 2-minute version, the 2-minute drill. And this is something that certainly came up at our workshop last week. More art than science. Certainly, it comes down to what someone's willing to take and what you're willing to give. I will say, historically, most laundromats sell between 3 and 5 times the annual net. That doesn't necessarily mean what they're worth. That means what they sell for. Generally speaking, if you look at comps, laundromat sales have definitely gotten a little bit higher in the range of late, particularly for the kind of the top level stores that, again, every time we do one of these sessions every month, there's just a ton of you that are looking to get in the business. So that naturally, I think, is pushing up some valuations on those stores that are really in great shape. But one of the things I really want to emphasize is um, there are very key factors that influence what that multiplier should look like. And I know Paul uses this method himself, is obviously net income is a big factor, meaning the higher volume stores, the higher net stores are going to command a higher multiple for the most part. Age and condition of the equipment. Again, I alluded to this a bit earlier. If the store's got 5-year-old equipment, you're going to get a much higher multiple. If it's 15 or 20 years, you're going to expect to pay or receive, if you're the seller, a much lower multiple, because you've got to fold in that recapitalization of the business that's got to happen. So if the seller hasn't done it, chances are the buyer has to do it. And again, that could be $1 million investment. If you know, it's certainly at least 600,000 or 700,000 in a lot of these projects that I'm seeing out there. So, and then the terms and conditions of the lease, right? So you cannot pick up and move a laundromat unless you're a super expert, and I would not. That's for advanced people under the toughest circumstances. And so you have this cash flow of a business that's being protected by a lease that's got a finite term on it. Okay. And so because you can't really pick up and move a laundromat, and all the investment is made in that facility, the infrastructure for utilities, et cetera, the terms, which is typically the price of the lease, the cost of the lease, and the fine print, but even more so, the duration of the lease has a lot to say about the value of the business, because that really determines how long you're going to be able to operate that business. So the shorter the lease, the older the equipment, the less value the store has. The longer the lease, the newer the equipment, the greater value that business is going to have. And so really important to understand those factors. And we'll talk some more about leases here before we close out. I'll also mention that due diligence, and Paul's been through this a million times, I'm sure. Buying a cash business is not easy. It's not for beginners necessarily. You got to get some help, because there's often a big challenge in due diligence with respect to the representation of the buyer, both for revenue and expenses. And so these are all things you need to keep in mind. And like I said, Paul, we've got videos, white papers, other resources on valuation, but what are some other things that you would add in your experience about how to arrive at a number? Because you've been a buyer and a seller.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, I mean, especially if it's 100% coin store, it's very difficult to verify the income without, people will sometimes say, hey, I'll come in and collect with you. You collect 3 days a week, I'm going to come collect with you. But I've heard stories of people finding the owner at 2 a.m, taking money and putting it back into the machine so that when he collects it. So that's a challenge. So there we kind of rely more on ratios. Utility ratios is a good one. A lot of stores now, a lot of the more modern stores are using more alternative payment systems, whether it's card or app based. Those are much easier to verify. But it could be difficult. It could be difficult. Tax returns are important, because if they're understating revenue, the tax return is going to tell you a lot. They're not going to overstate their income on their tax return.
Gives you a floor.
Gives you a floor. But yeah, you need to work with somebody who's done this before and to figure that out. But there are ways to make that happen.
Yep. Okay. So again, that's just a quick thumbnail on laundromat valuation. I talked about financing here. I'm just going to make sure there isn't anything that I missed in my earlier description to you all. But again, there's nothing wrong with the SBA or going with conventional lenders. I mean, SBA generally likes the laundromat business. They've done plenty of laundromat loans, but when you're doing the SBA, that really begins with a conventional lender that is looking to have their loan to you guaranteed by the SBA. So you got to find, like most things, this is the theme of the conversation, right? You got to find a local banker that really knows the traps and how to go through the application process with the SBA. And not everybody has an appetite for that. So that definitely is a thing that you can do. I talked about the captive lenders, limited opportunities for seller financing, but could be a good fit. And then most people, it's some combination here, right? You got your personal savings, maybe equity that you've got in other places, friends, family partnerships, especially getting the first time thing going. You're probably cobbling together some combination of these opportunities to make sure that the financing happens. So Rosa just popped in a question about a list of lenders. So if you go to laundryassociation.org, there's a great directory resource. So you can look for the local distributors in your area. There's a directory by state of those that are member associations, and so they're part of the organization. You can find that list as a starting point to find those. With respect to lenders, washer manufacturers, payment system manufacturers, there's another question here from Manuel about the different software companies that support wash, dry, fold, and delivery. All those companies are listed there. There's probably 200 companies in total on our website. So please use that as a resource. Catherine just re-upped that in the chat with a link. So yeah, take advantage of that as a resource and start getting to know these folks. They'll all be at the Clean Show. They'll all be at future CLA events, like our Wash, Dry, Fold conference that'll be coming up toward the end of October of next year. So lots of resources out there. Let's jump through a few more slides. So I share this with some some appropriate caveats and just warnings. So we do benchmarking surveys every year, which is a huge value of being a member of the association. You get this information every year. If you're brand new, you absolutely need to put your hands on these annual surveys. So that is the source of this. And so the average for water, sewer, gas, and electric is 20%. Okay. I think most of our members with a retooled or newer store would be targeting a lower percentage than that. If you're looking at an older store with the old machines, do this quick math. You might find, oh, this store is operating at 30%, 35%, depending how old their machines are. And so this is your one variable expense of substance is the utility. So the efficiency through which or at which you operate the store when it comes to water, sewer, gas, and electric, that is the key to this business. Yes, you need to negotiate the right lease. You got to find the right people to work for you, but there's no getting around the fact that if you can generate more pounds of clean clothes using fewer utilities, you're going to be more profitable. And Paul, I know you ascribe to this and replace equipment early, if not earlier than most. I would imagine driven primarily not just based on the bells and whistles, but the efficiency of the equipment.
Oh yeah, I've seen huge increases in or decreases, I should say, in utility costs by every time I put new equipment in. I mean, it could drop as much as 20%. I mean, it depends on how you program them and how you had your old ones programmed. But yeah, it could be huge.
Yeah, and again, we've got people that are retooling a store and going from 30% utilities to 15% utilities. It sounds outrageous, but we see it all the time, and sometimes it's even better than that. So bear that in mind for utilities. Rent, the average is about 23% of gross sales. I think most people target 20%. Obviously, the lower the better. That's a fixed cost that you're going to have to live with. So the lower the better. Payroll, as Paul said, labor is getting harder and getting more expensive. A lot of you are in markets that have a much higher minimum wage than others. So the average about 22%, but I think our folks continue to want to target that 15 to 20% if they can get there. But again, easier said than done, but just wanted to give you some of these general guidelines that you can plug into your mix. Again, lots of caveats here. This is just straight from our survey. This ties back to that 2,850 square foot store, remember, right? That's a through line through the data that I'm sharing. So I like surveys where the mean and the median are close. That usually means that you've got a good sample and it's statistically sound. And then the net profitability. We talked about some margins earlier, but this would be sort of your EBITDA line with the 25% average and a median at 27%. So plenty perform higher, plenty perform lower. Lots of stores lose money, lots of stores make crazy money. But each one has to be treated on its own merits. And this is, again, taken straight from our surveys. let me jump into a few more questions here. Again, I'm watching the clock here. We've got 15 minutes to go. Alberto is asking about how much money is needed to get started. Again, I'll refer you back to some of what I shared earlier. Probably 30% down on a new store project, 30 to 40% down on an acquisition. But in most cases, that equates to, I talk to a lot of distributors that help put people into business. They're asking people to have 300 to 500,000 in cash for most projects to get started. But do your own math, do your own homework. But that's generally the range that I'm seeing out there today. Tahisha, hi again, Tahisha. You remember we've talked a couple of times. Who can help with evaluating a laundromat before acquiring? So there's a couple of options there. Certainly, you're a member of the association. We have members that send me deals all the time. Always happy to take a look at those. Sometimes there's a local broker that has an expertise in laundromats. Remember, there's a difference between a general business broker and a laundromat broker. It's important to understand those differences in terms of getting yourself some help. But Tahisha, I'm happy to look at any deals that that you're looking at.
I would also say that just about most of the people that are involved in the CLA, whether current or former board members, are in general are more than happy to talk to people. In fact, sometimes we need to because our families are sick of hearing about it. So
we need someone else to talk about
we need
laundromats.
somebody else, yeah. So a lot of us are real laundry geeks and can talk your ear off about it. So, and I know, I can't speak for everybody, but I know most of the guys I know and girls I know that would be more than happy to at least give you some phone conversations.
Yeah, and Trevor, you affirm here in the chat that there's some great consultants out there, good brokers. So you have to really look at it and understand what you're looking at. John Pierce over in the Q&A box asks, what are the top reasons laundromats fail? I'll start that, Paul, and maybe you can share from your experience. I mean, I think that a couple things come to mind right away. Poor location is definitely at the top of that list. A lease issue is absolutely at the top of that list. If you run out of time, you run out of business. I would also say a top three for me would probably be that just the owner wasn't cut out for it. It just wasn't a good fit for them. It was taking more time they expected. And so they start to neglect it and the equipment starts to run down and they don't have it's sort of a slippery slope when folks start to ignore the business. So what has been your observation, Paul, in terms of failures?
I think those are really good ones. I think being undercapitalized, I mean, you had mentioned the 30, 40% down. I mean, certainly some lenders will give you, especially on equipment, 100%. That might not always be advantageous, especially if you're just starting out. I mean, it's a big nut to crack every month. So I think that's a big issue. Just not maintaining your place, not reinvesting in the place. We call those, and you see them, we call those zombie mats, which is kind of a trademark from one of our members that have just been let to run and just kind of are just dead but still walking. You got to be reinvest. You got to keep it clean. You can't have a place that's a mess. People don't want to come into it. They're not going to pay. I think a lot of people don't keep up with things like inflation rates with pricing. People, are so afraid to change their prices at one time or another that they just sit on there for years and years, and then it's too late. It's going to be hard to compete and hard to raise those prices that high. So you got to treat it like any other business. What people want. They want clean, they want efficient, and they want, good value for their dollars. Not necessarily about cheap. It's about being good value for what you're spending.
Yeah. And again, you're asking someone to spend 2 hours a week with you every single week. So you better make it a nice place for them to be if you want to capture and understand that they're going to come see you every week and get their business. I'm going to rip through a couple of remaining slides. Again, everybody, you'll get a copy of these. We're going to share the recording. Paul's given you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of great advice. So please take advantage of that. So here's just a look at the last couple of years. I mentioned that we really hold up well, or at least historically have held up well. in terms of that case in 2020 was the pandemic. But if I went back further to the Great Recession in 08 and 09, again, we'd rather not do it again, but our industry held up pretty well. Again, I shared this at the beginning. I do have this chart on buy versus build. Again, I won't read this back to you. You'll have this as a resource. But again, buying a store is typically least expensive, but then you're inheriting issues. It's hard to do the due diligence. The equipment may not be new and the lease might be on the shorter end of it. Building a new store, it's by definition an yet to be proven or unproven location. And it's more expensive. It's obviously a higher lift to build something that's brand new, but also tends to have a higher ceiling in terms of upside potential down the road. So buy versus build, I don't think there's a right answer. You really have to look at each opportunity on its own merits and let that determine where you invest your money. Did I mention leases about 10 times? Lease, 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 lease. I just cannot stress this enough. You have to make sure that that lease is in good condition. And so whether it's a new store, really holding to make sure that before you sign sign a deal to buy equipment or fully commit, make sure that you have that lease buttoned up perfectly. If you're making an acquisition, make that one of the first things you ask about. If you want to do a little bit of a shortcut, hey, there's 12 stores available in my market. Start asking about the lease first, and it'll save you a lot of time and heartache, because if you don't resolve any lease challenges, it's a moot point. So make sure you get some expertise on your team, understand what the rent escalations look like. Remember, lease options that don't have a price tag or an escalation attached to them are not time that you can count on, because that cost is not spelled out in the lease. So I know we beat this up pretty hard, Paul, but anything you would add on the lease front that we haven't shared to this point?
No, I think we've covered all of that.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's talk about more resources. A lot of you in the chat and on the Q&A have been asking about other resources. CLA's YouTube channel, there's 500 plus videos. You'll see a lot of Paul, you'll see a lot of me, a lot of our other experts from prior presentations. So please use that as a resource. You can find us on the socials at Laundry Association. So you can find us on all the, you know what the channels are. I put together some laundromat FAQ videos that are on YouTube. It's its own playlist. If you want to see just a short 5, 6, 8-minute coverage of leases, valuation, due diligence, how to find a store for sale, site location, there's a series of videos that answer those questions. So please use that as a resource. There's a lot of great Facebook groups out there. You can find our CLA at Laundromat Professionals Network. So please take advantage of that. I mentioned at the top that one of the things that we do also is provide a lot of business solutions for our members. We're sort of an extension of your team. Paul, thank you for that offer to help. So laundromat insurance is very important and is not like other retail or service business insurance. Be sure to use our expertise. We've been doing that for a long time. Paul also mentioned trying to get good contracts for natural gas and electricity. We have a dedicated vendor, Chris Ward, who does an awesome job. All he does every day is help laundromats negotiate better electricity and gas contracts. So please tap into that. There was a question or 2 or 3 questions on marketing. Yes, we've got a really good set of resources available through AMP when it comes to marketing your business. So use us as a resource. The worst you did today is now you've got a couple of friends in the industry as you're pursuing this. And to really take it to the next level, please consider joining the association. As I said, people have done this before. They've gone where you're trying to go. They've learned, they've made mistakes, they've built a knowledge base, and we have the ability to share that with you. So I think the new membership is at a $5.99 investment. This promo code knocks that down to $500. $500 when you're about to spend 3, 4, 5, 600,000, let alone $1 million more. Just take advantage of it. And Paul, you kindly gave us that testimonial at the top, but I know that membership is certainly worth every penny.
Absolutely. I mean, not only for this stage, which is great that everyone here is taking this step. It's once you're in it, some of the programs we have available are more than pay for your membership. I mean, the natural gas alone, or utilities, I should say, gas and electric could easily pay for that self many times over in your first year. So it's well worth it.
I appreciate that endorsement, and that gets us to our thank you. So we've spent 90 minutes together talking about the laundromat business. And Paul, I just can't thank you enough. Not everybody's willing to share their secrets, share what they've learned. And this has been hugely valuable to the folks that have been with us over the last 90 minutes. I see all the thank yous popping up in the chat. We're very excited to not only introduce you to the business, hopefully give you some things that you need to work on in terms of homework, but just know that we're here to help you as you get into the next steps, and we want to see you be successful. So you're welcome, Matt. Mike, you're welcome. Wayne, you're welcome. Amir, you're welcome. Just good stuff happening. Rob, you're welcome. So let us be part of your journey. Thanks for spending this time with us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, everyone. Been
All right,
great.
take care, Paul. Thanks again.
All right. Bye-bye.